which I would argue is one of the biggest mistakes that you can make with American Express cards. American Express adds new perks to Delta cards, Centurion New York is now accepting reservations, and check your emails because you might still be able to bring guests into Centurion lounges. This and more in today's roundup that's mostly focused on American Express. Before we dive into everything, big favor is to give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm, and if you are someone new, to consider subscribing. Starting off, we have American Express, who partnered with Delta to add some new perks to their credit cards. Take Off 15 was launched earlier this month, and it's had pretty mixed reception. This new benefit applies to Delta Gold, Platinum, and Reserve Consumer and Business cards. If you are someone that has the Delta Blue card, then I guess you're out of luck. You get this discount by using Shop with Miles. Note that discount does not apply to partner-operated flights, so non-Delta metal, and also not for taxes and fees. Generally, with Shop with Miles, you're looking at about 1.2 to maybe 1.5 cents per point. So for example, 100,000 miles should be about $1,200 in value. In theory, with this 15% back, you should be bumped up to about 1.3 to maybe 1.4 cents per point. Also confusingly, this is Shop with Miles, which is different from Pay with Miles. For the latter, you get guaranteed 1 cent per point in value when you use a Delta card to book. In that case, 100,000 points is equal to $1,000. The big fear early on is that Delta is just going to increase the cost of these rewards in order to compensate for this. Kind of what we see with some other brands where they'll have sale prices, but then the price is suddenly higher than it normally is. Heading over to Flyer Talk, a lot of people have this concern. In practice, this hasn't been the case, and people have been able to rebook and actually save money. So if you are someone that recently booked, it might be worth rechecking and seeing what the numbers look like. And to be fair, this is just a short term, and the long term things could easily change. It does bring up a pretty good question of why Delta Sky Miles tend to be one of the most hated currencies out there. A lot of this has to do with expectations versus reality. When we talk about points, we're either looking to save money on something that we're already going to do, or get outsized value. So for example, with 100,000 points, instead of just getting $1,000 in travel, how do you get maybe $2,000 or $3,000 or $10,000 in value via a business or first class flight? Delta, at least in general, does not offer this opportunity. I think DCS put it pretty well. Sky Miles don't offer high value redemptions and generally not as many sweet spots. Instead, it's more like Southwest where you know exactly what the redemption value is and what you're getting. The points are pretty much tied to cash, and the best use case is going to be domestic economy. So it's not technically worthless, but it's worthless for these aspirational flights. I find that the angry people generally fall into 3 different camps. Number 1 is frequent flyers and consultants who have to fly a lot, who earn a lot of Delta miles and wish that they were worth a lot more. Especially if they have coworkers and other people they know who maybe can fly United or American and they're earning a ton of miles that they can do cool stuff with. Number 2 are going to be people that are more well off and they're comfortable paying for the economy flight already. They're after using points towards business and first. So $500 to $1,000 is fine. That's something that they're comfortable paying out of pocket. But let's say $15,000, $20,000 is still a bit out of reach. A lot of people in this camp view Sky Miles as either Sky Pesos or Sky Rupees. For them, they're not willing to pick up pennies, but they're willing to pick up quarters. Number 3 are going to be newer people who don't really understand how everything works, and then they transfer to Delta because it sounds good and they like the normal economy Delta product. Maybe it's other creators not saying enough, or maybe it's brand association, but I feel like this is one of the biggest mistakes that you could make with American Express points. Even if you do want to fly Delta One suites, the best way is to probably transfer American Express points to Virgin, and then to use Virgin points to book Delta. This is speaking as someone who has Delta Diamond status, who likes Delta, and mostly flies Delta when they're in the US. At the same time, I'm sitting on a bunch of points that are great for economy, but not really great for what I want to do that is interesting. If you are looking for aspirational travel, then stick with the banks, so Chase, American Express, Citi, as well as Capital One, or if you have to do airlines, either American or Alaska. For example, Mandy and I are planning a few trips to Japan for 2023, and Japan Airlines First Class is one of the best options out there. In fact, people like Lucky have it in their top 10, and it's next to pretty solid offerings such as Singapore, Cathay, and Etihad. Price-wise, it's pretty affordable at 70,000 Alaska miles and $19 in taxes and fees. And yes, this is first class from LAX to Haneda, and dates are available. I also may or may not be booking this after filming. The hard product looks pretty good, and you also have the option to have dinner with your player too if that's your jam. If you are interested in doing this, then the Bank of America Alaska card has a pretty good intro bonus. The limited time offer right now is 70,000 bonus miles after just $3,000 in purchases within the first 90 days. There is a $95 annual fee, but it might be a keeper card for some people. If Japan isn't your jam, then you can also use 70,000 miles to book Cathay Pacific First Class to Hong Kong. On that note, if you do want to learn about this card or pretty much any other card out there and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, AskSebby.com, and down below in the description box. Make sure that the links are competitive and that you're picking a card that makes sense for you, but otherwise, using those links does really support the channel, so thank you guys in advance. So for example, Delta is great for economy, Alaska is great for aspirational stuff, MR American Express points lets you kind of play around both sides. According to View from the Wing, the Centurion New York is opening on March 9th of 2023, and they're now taking reservations. So if you are someone that has a Centurion card, you can make reservations in your app that I guess no one else has access to. If you are a Platinum member, you might be able to still get it, but in the future. One of the key things that Gary heard is that it's not going to only be Centurion members, but it's also going to be Platinum members who have access to this, which kind of makes sense. The space is going to have 3 key dining areas. The first one's the studio bar, which is going to be small bites, and it's going to be more buzzy with alcohol. I would not be surprised if they have some very photogenic drinks that do well on social media. I'll touch on this in a minute, but I think it's going to be a big meta strategy. Number 2 is going to be the gallery, which is going to be fine dining. Number 3 is the studio, which is casual but elevated dining. Basically a sit down and full entree extension to the bar. If you think about it, at the end of the day, it's a bar and 2 restaurants. Call me crazy, but I cannot imagine them wanting an empty restaurant. And even by the numbers, I think it's questionable that they can fill the whole place with only Centurion members. In total, there's about 100,000 Centurion members and 20,000 in the US. Of the 20,000, there's probably 5,000 to maybe upwards of 10,000 that are in New York City. Of that group, consider that those people tend to have a lot of other options as well. And to be fair, I think short term it will mostly be Centurion members given the novelty factor, but long term, they'll probably have to fill the room with some Platinum members. For most people, when they go to restaurants, they want something that's full and kind of bustling. If it only had one table that was full, then I think it'd feel very sterile. At the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if they cancel some reservations for Platinum members to make room for Centurion members. I think they want to make it so that the Centurion member can pick up the phone and pretty much guarantee their spot.
Dorcia?
Yeah, can you take 2 tonight?
We're totally booked.
That's great.
I said we are totally booked.
Perfect. See you then.
So pretty much imagine that works. If they don't want to open the floodgates, they can kind of gate it based off spend. We'll touch on this, but technically the lounge already has this, where if you spend more than $75,000 on the Platinum card, then you can bring in guests for free. There are 3 other sections. The salon is a place to chat with other guests over free complimentary coffee, and a place to read, work, and take in the views. So I think this is the main area that's going to be Centurion only. I'm pretty sure they don't want this to become a WeWork. The Wine Vault is a place where you can take a party to experience the wine, whether tastings or themed wine dinners. Last one is going to be 2 multi-function dining rooms that can be reserved individually. I think for the last 2, it's going to be like the restaurant, where they're going to prioritize Centurion members, but normal people can probably book it. As long as they're willing to pay the money to book the space out, I don't think they really care. Lots of things are still up in the air, but I think it should be pretty exciting. As much as I love Chase and Capital One, I think they are playing a different game. American Express feels like they're beating and moving to their own music. In fact, a lot of what American Express is doing seems pretty well orchestrated, and they're taking a lot of notes from the Hermes playbook. Long story short, Hermes is a luxury leather goods company. They have a ton of normal items, but they also have kind of their grail item, which is the Birkin. You, as a normal person, can walk into a Hermes store and buy most of the other items, but in order to get a Birkin, you have to basically be tapped on the head and chosen. In fact, you generally need to spend something like $10,000 or $25,000 in other Hermes items in order to have the right to buy the Birkin. So the strategy is to make it seem just out of reach. That way, when you do get selected for it, you feel honored. For Hermes, they want to sell a lot of the other items, so they're using the Birkin bag as bait. For American Express, kind of the same thing. They want to get more card members and more spend. I could see them treating these Centurion spaces as their Birkin. The last topic is going to be Centurion lounges. Per the terms, officially the guesting rules have started. The 2 main exceptions to this are if you have a Centurion card or if you have a Platinum with guesting privileges. In order to get guesting privileges, you would need to spend $75,000 on the Platinum card in a calendar year. I'm not sure if the airports have been less busy than they expected, but it looks like they expanded this criteria. They sent out emails to a ton of people who did not spend $75,000. Check for an email around February 8th titled "You are now eligible." Also note that even if you didn't get this email, check your account because you might have guesting privileges. If you log in using desktop, in the top area, it says that this benefit is now unlocked through January 31st of 2024. If you scroll to the bottom, pretty much the same thing, it's checked off, and when you click in, it's also still checked off. The crazy part is that no one really knows what's causing this. Some people think it's aggregated spend across all your cards, while other ones are looking at your purchasing behavior and where you shop. Kind of like a mini Centurion card review. My guess is a bit different, but it's based off the airport that you're based out of and how long you've had the card. So for example, if you've held the Platinum card for the last 3 to 5 years, it probably makes sense to reward you and to keep you happy. When you think about products, getting customers in the door is the most expensive part and the hardest part, and with credit cards, there's an intro bonus attached, so you generally don't want them leaving. Number 2, I wouldn't be surprised if some airports are now less busy because they're also a lot bigger now. We'll touch on that in a second, but super fast, if you do want to get access and you don't want to spend $75K, option number 1 is to get the Morgan Stanley version of the Platinum. So pretty much exactly the same thing, but you have to have that Morgan Stanley relationship, and it allows you to get one authorized user Platinum card for free. So for example, I added my mom to this card, and she's actually going to be using it soon. They're going to Hong Kong, and for whatever reason, they love the Plaza Premium Lounge. Also kind of the same for Mandy's family, where they really like the Plaza Premium Lounges. If I had to guess, it's probably because they have wonton mein and a lot of other Chinese street food staples. Option number 2, if you have the normal Platinum, you can add up to 3 authorized users for $175. So whether 1, 2, or 3, it's still $175. Obviously, it's great if you have player 2, 3, and 4, but not as great if you only have one partner. If you have adult-aged kids or if you have family that you don't mind adding, then pretty good choice to do that for the 3. And then if you only are adding 1, I would consider having them get their own Platinum card. The rationale is because the math, surprisingly, generally works out. We do have a calculator on AskSebby.com if you want to play with the numbers, and you can Google AskSebby Platinum Worth It to find it, or just go to the link down below. Year 1 generally makes sense due to the intro bonus and all the other credits. Long term, it depends on the credits more than anything, but yeah, I think a lot of people would be surprised. And even if you have the card or you're considering yourself, I think going through the math is helpful. If you are looking to apply, I'd look for the Card Match 150K offer. I'll put a blog post link down below for that as well. The last topic is lounges expanding. The Seattle Centurion Lounge was recently closed and just reopened, and it's 14,000 square feet. So pretty much 3 times the size of the previous one, and the previous one is now closed. As someone who did previously visit the smaller lounge a few times, I think most people would go to the small lounge to get drinks, maybe a snack, and then settle into the Delta Sky Club afterwards. The SFO Centurion Lounge was also recently expanded, and I did do a super fast preview in the Delta One Suites video. That should be over on Sebby Fung if you're interested in the whole Japan trip. If you're sick of my voice for today, then Mandy also has her version on Mandy Roams. Again, if you do want to learn about cards, we have links on the website, AskSebby.com, and down below in the description box. If you made it to this point in the video, then leave a whiskey glass emoji in the comments down below, and I'll try to heart it and also respond. My question for you is, what are your thoughts on the new Delta Perk? What about Centurion New York? How do you think they're going to expand that or play with it? And also Centurion Lounges. What do you think is going to happen? Let me know and everyone else know in the comments down below. Big favor, give this a thumbs up, consider subscribing, but otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.